crashing into rocks. I memorized his face for my future revenge operations. System activation requires the consumption of energy. A blue screen illuminated the dark corners of my cell. This digital interface offered a slim chance of escape. I bit the glowing blue orb resting on the dirty floor. Pure thermal energy rushed through my damaged vocal cords. My central head absorbed the power with maximum efficiency. First, Dead Skull requires high-level demonic essence. The left head twitched slightly after the system warning. I understood the necessary steps to achieve true power. I shifted my center of gravity away from the iron door. The rusted hinges groaned under the sudden heavy impact. A low-ranked demon beast entered my designated prison zone. It lunged forward with its sharp claws fully extended. I rolled sideways to avoid the direct physical collision. My dead right head acted as a perfect counterweight now. I swung my heavy, lifeless neck like a medieval weapon. The dead skull slammed directly into the demon beast's jaw. Bone fractured under the massive kinetic force generated. The creature collapsed onto the cold floor without moving. A glowing purple core rolled slowly out of its open mouth. This concentrated energy would serve my purpose perfectly. I pushed the purple core toward my dead left head skull. System confirms the absorption of minor poison essence. The dry skin on the left neck began to slowly regenerate. A green, toxic aura sparked around the previously dead jaw. The iron chains around my body started to melt rapidly. Corrosive acid provided an excellent tool for my escape. I stepped out of the broken cell into the main corridor. Torches flickered wildly as the toxic gas filled the air. My sensory organs detected a much larger threat approaching. A minor demon king blocked the only exit from the dungeon. His heavy armor reflected the dim light of the wall fires. I needed to analyze his structural weaknesses immediately. He slammed his giant hammer into the solid stone ground. Shockwaves threw my fragile body against the cavern wall. Direct confrontation would result in my instant destruction. I channeled the new poison energy into my left side neck. Toxic projectile skill unlocked for the left head unit. This new ability changed the mathematical odds of survival. My left head spat a concentrated orb of green acid venom. The projectile struck the vulnerable joints of his armor. Metal dissolved rapidly under the extreme chemical reaction. The Demon King dropped his weapon due to the sudden pain. His massive body crashed heavily onto his armored knees. I saw the perfect opening to end this difficult encounter. I sprinted forward and tackled his exposed chest plating. Kinetic momentum pushed him backward into a support pillar. The weakened stone structure collapsed directly on his head. Dust filled the corridor as the heavy debris settled down. Target eliminated, and high-grade essence is available. I approached the crushed remains to claim my rightful prize. I extracted the glowing green core from the ruined armor. My left head swallowed the massive energy crystal instantly, left head fully restored with absolute poison mastery. The dry scales transformed into thick, venomous green armor. My left eye opened and locked onto the dark passage ahead. Two functioning heads provided a superior field of vision. My dead right head suddenly dragged me toward the right. Second skull demands the essence of a fire demon king. I realized this dungeon was only the first training phase. I walked past the destroyed gate into the lower fiery pits. Extreme thermal radiation washed over my newly formed scales. This environment would test my newly acquired toxic powers. 3 armored firehounds blocked the narrow lava bridge. Their glowing red eyes tracked my every single movement. I calculated the trajectory of their impending group attack. The first hound leapt across the bubbling magma pool. I sidestepped its trajectory with calculated precision. Its body crashed into the solid obsidian wall behind me. My left head released a thick cloud of corrosive green gas. The remaining 2 hounds lost their visual tracking lock. Blind enemies always make fatal tactical errors in combat. I charged through the toxic smoke with maximum velocity. My central jaw clamped down on the nearest hound's neck. Spinal column snapped under the immense pressure applied. The third hound attempted to bite my dead right side skull. Its teeth shattered against the petrified bone structure. Using my dead head as a shield proved highly effective. I whipped my body around to deliver a devastating strike. The heavy dead skull smashed into the hound's ribcage. Internal damage neutralized the final target immediately. Multiple minor fire cores detected in the combat zone. I gathered the glowing red stones from the defeated beasts. These small energy sources would initiate the next process. I forced the fire cores into the dead right head's mouth. Insufficient energy to revive the secondary fire skull. I needed a much larger thermal source to complete the task. A massive roar echoed from the depths of the lava cavern. The magma pool erupted into a towering pillar of pure fire. A high-fire demon king emerged from the burning liquid. His giant flaming sword illuminated the entire underground. The ambient temperature rose to critically dangerous levels. My poison armor began to melt under the extreme heat wave. He swung his massive blade in a wide horizontal arc. I dropped flat onto the hot obsidian floor to avoid it. The sword sliced through the solid stone pillars easily. Falling debris created a temporary barrier between us. Warning regarding critical structural integrity failure. I had to defeat him before the entire cavern collapsed. My left head fired a continuous stream of liquid poison. The acid evaporated before reaching his superheated armor. Standard ranged attacks were completely useless right now. I noticed a large stalactite hanging directly above his head. Its base looked structurally compromised by the recent heat. I needed to force him into the exact center of the room. I sprinted toward the edge of the bubbling magma pool. The Demon King followed my path with heavy, aggressive steps. His predictable anger made him easily susceptible to traps. He raised his flaming sword for a devastating vertical strike. I focused all my kinetic energy into my hind leg muscles. A sudden backward leap removed me from the direct impact zone. His massive blade smashed directly into the cavern floor. The kinetic shockwave shattered the unstable ceiling above. Physics handled the rest of this difficult assassination. The giant obsidian stalactite detached from the high roof. It crashed down onto the Demon King with incredible force. His heavy armor crumpled under the massive falling weight. Major threat eliminated through environmental manipulation. The lava pool calmed down as the boss lost his life force. A brilliant crimson core floated up from his crushed body. I grabbed the massive energy crystal with my central jaws. Extreme heat burned the inside of my normal canine mouth. I quickly transferred the burning core to the right skull. System confirms the absorption of major fire essence. The dead right neck ignited with a bright orange flame. Ash and dead skin burned away to reveal glowing red scales. My right eye snapped open with a burst of thermal energy. Right head fully restored with absolute fire mastery. I now possessed 3 fully functional and deadly heads. My physical body began to expand rapidly in all directions. Bones cracked and lengthened under the intense evolution. Host upgrading to the legendary SSS-Rank Cerberus form. Thick golden chains materialized around my massive new neck. These divine restraints signified my new elite monster status. I was no longer a pathetic crippled dog in a dirty cell. My poison head hissed while my fire head roared loudly. The central head maintained absolute control over the body. This perfect synchronization granted me unparalleled power. I smashed my giant paw into the solid obsidian ground. The entire dungeon level collapsed under the kinetic impact. It was time to hunt the remaining Demon Kings in this realm. A massive steel door blocked the path to the upper levels. My right head unleashed a concentrated beam of pure plasma. The thick metal melted into a pool of glowing liquid iron. I stepped through the breached doorway into a massive arena. Thousands of lesser demons stopped their activities at once. Their collective fear generated a palpable shift in the air. An elite Ice Demon King sat upon a frozen throne above them. His blue eyes locked onto my newly evolved massive form. System Quest updated to consume the absolute ice core. He raised his hand and summoned a storm of sharp ice spears. The projectiles flew toward my body at supersonic speeds. I needed to test the defensive capabilities of my new form. My left head exhaled a thick wall of corrosive green gas. The ice spears dissolved instantly upon touching the acid. Chemical reactions completely neutralized his opening attack. The Ice King stood up from his throne with visible anger. He slammed his frozen staff against the arena balcony rail. I prepared my fire head for a devastating counteroffensive. My right head gathered thermal energy deep within its throat. A massive fireball launched toward the high balcony target. This display of absolute power would demoralize his army. The Ice King leapt down into the center of the arena. Frost spread rapidly across the dirt where his boots landed. His agility surpassed the previous enemies I had encountered. He dashed forward, leaving a trail of frozen mist behind. A blade of solid ice materialized in his right hand grip. I calculated the optimal timing for a physical interception. I swung my massive right paw toward his approaching form. He slid underneath my strike using the slippery ice floor. His tactical use of the environment required a new strategy. He slashed my front leg with his extremely sharp ice blade. The weapon shattered against my thick SSS-Rank golden scales. My physical defense was now virtually impenetrable to magic. I stomped my left foot heavily onto the frozen arena dirt. The kinetic shockwave threw the Ice King off his balance. A disrupted center of gravity always leads to a fatal error. My central head lunged forward to crush his armored torso. He quickly generated a thick ice shield to block my teeth. This defensive maneuver only delayed his inevitable defeat. My right head unleashed a continuous stream of pure fire. The thick ice shield melted into steam within 3 seconds. Thermal superiority made his primary defense completely void. My left head sprayed concentrated acid directly onto his chest. His heavy frost armor dissolved rapidly under the toxic fluid. Combining elemental attacks resulted in maximum destruction. The Ice King collapsed onto his back in total physical ruin. A massive blue core pulsed brightly from his exposed chest. This final energy source would complete my ultimate evolution. I extracted the freezing core using my central canine teeth. Extreme cold numbed my tongue as I swallowed the crystal. The internal temperature shift shocked my biological system. System confirms the absorption of absolute ice essence. My central head began to transform under the freezing power. I finally achieved the legendary balance of 3 elements. Frost covered my central snout as the evolution finalized. Host has successfully unlocked the tri-element authority. This entire demon realm would now bow to my absolute power. I released a synchronized roar from all 3 of my heads. Poison, fire, and ice blasted into the high arena ceiling. The visual display of dominance terrified the lesser demons. Thousands of monsters dropped to their knees in submission. The arena fell completely silent under my intimidating gaze. Ruling this underground world was only my first objective. I turned my massive body toward the main fortress gates. The golden chains around my neck clinked with heavy weight. These divine restraints hinted at a much higher power level. New system objective requires breaking the golden chains. A map materialized in my vision showing the upper surface. The human world above held the keys to my true liberation. I stepped forward and crushed a large boulder into powder. My massive paws left deep, burning footprints in the dirt. Every step I took reinforced my new status as an apex predator. The lesser demons parted to create a wide path for my exit. None of them dared to make eye contact with my 3 heads. Absolute fear proved to be the most effective leadership tool. I approached the massive steel doors of the demon fortress. The metal gates stood 50 feet tall and incredibly thick. Standard physical force would not breach this heavy barrier. I charged my 3 elemental breaths simultaneously at once. Green, red, and blue energy swirled inside my massive jaws. Combining these volatile elements created a chaotic reaction. I unleashed the tri-elemental beam directly into the steel. The massive doors disintegrated instantly upon direct impact. My destructive output vastly exceeded my initial calculations. Sunlight poured into the dark cavern for the very first time. The bright rays reflected off my golden chains and dark scales. This unfamiliar illumination signaled the start of a new war. I walked out of the underground and surveyed the landscape. A vast human kingdom stretched across the distant horizon. Those fragile humans had no idea what was coming for them. System detects multiple high-level heroes in the vicinity. My 3 heads snapped toward the nearby dense forest line. Fresh prey would provide an excellent test of my new abilities. A group of heavily armed knights emerged from the tall trees. Their silver armor gleamed brightly under the morning sun. They looked incredibly confident in their shiny metal suits. The lead knight drew his glowing holy sword with a loud ring. He pointed the glowing blade directly at my central face. His arrogant posture revealed a complete lack of combat experience. I slowly exhaled a tiny puff of corrosive green poison gas. The toxic cloud drifted lazily toward the group of knights. I wanted to measure their basic magical defense capabilities. The lead knight raised his shield to block the incoming gas. His silver shield melted into a puddle of bubbling liquid. Human metallurgy was pathetically weak against my new venom. Panic immediately spread through the ranks of the human army. Several knights dropped their heavy weapons and ran away. Their so-called heroic courage disappeared in mere seconds. I leapt into the air and landed directly behind their leader. The ground shook violently under my massive physical weight. Cutting off their escape route ensured a complete victory. My right head snapped its jaws around the leader's torso. His holy armor crumpled like thin paper under the pressure. I made sure not to apply lethal force just yet for a reason. I tossed his paralyzed body back toward the remaining knights. He crashed into his comrades and knocked them to the dirt. Using their leader as a projectile was highly efficient. Host has gained substantial psychological dominance points. The system notification confirmed my tactical approach worked. Breaking their minds was just as important as breaking bones. I stepped closer and let my central ice head exhale slowly. A wave of absolute zero temperature froze their lower legs. Immobilizing the targets prevented any further annoying escapes. The knights struggled desperately against the solid ice blocks. Their weapons clattered uselessly against the frozen ground. This pathetic display bored my highly evolved predator instincts. I raised my massive right paw to deliver the final crushing blow. A sudden beam of intense holy light struck my golden chains. The unexpected magical interference forced me to pause my attack. I turned my 3 heads toward the high cliff overlooking us. A powerful human mage floated in the air with a glowing staff. This new challenger radiated a much higher level of energy. Warning regarding a supreme tier human hero approaching. The golden chains around my neck vibrated with strange magic. I realized this mage held the key to unlocking my restraints. The floating mage pointed his crystal staff at my central head. A massive magic circle expanded rapidly in the sky above me. I needed to calculate the yield of his incoming magic spell. Dozens of holy light pillars crashed down onto my position. The intense radiant energy scorched the dirt all around me. My golden chains absorbed the majority of the magical damage. I used the thick smoke cover to reposition my massive body. The mage lost his visual lock on my exact ground location. Relying purely on sight was a fatal flaw for any magic user. My right head fired a volley of compressed fireballs upward. The projectiles exploded violently against his magical barrier. His defensive shield possessed a surprisingly high durability. I launched my massive body off the ground with extreme force. The kinetic leap propelled me directly toward the floating mage. Brute force remains highly effective even in aerial combat. My left head spat a concentrated stream of armor-melting acid. The green liquid splattered across his shimmering holy shield. Chemical corrosion degrades magic barriers extremely fast. The protective holy shield shattered like fragile glass. Shock registered clearly across the arrogant mage's face. He never expected a monster to break his ultimate defense. My central head clamped its jaws around his fragile waist. I dragged him out of the sky and plummeted toward the earth. Gravity would multiply the kinetic damage of our final impact. We crashed into the solid ground, creating a massive crater. Dust and debris shot into the air from the violent collision. My SSS-Rank durability completely negated the falling damage. The human mage lay broken and motionless in the deep dirt. His glowing magical staff rolled slowly out of his weak grip. This powerful artifact might interact with my golden chains. I picked up the glowing staff with my central ice head jaws. The holy artifact reacted violently to my demonic presence. I forced the struggling magical energy into my heavy restraints. The golden chains around my neck glowed with blinding light. A loud metallic crack echoed across the silent battlefield. The first seal on my absolute power had finally been broken. System confirms the destruction of the first divine seal. A massive surge of pure energy flowed through my entire body. My physical stats increased exponentially in a single moment. I let out a triumphant roar that shook the surrounding forest. Birds scattered into the sky and trees violently bent backward. This world would soon understand the true meaning of despair. I turned my attention back to the frozen group of knights. They watched my power display with absolute sheer terror. Leaving witnesses alive would spread my legend much faster. I stepped over the broken mage and walked toward the capital. My massive paws crushed the abandoned weapons on the ground. The human king was the next target on my extermination list. New system quest generated for the destruction of the kingdom. A red waypoint marker appeared on my internal visual display. Following these digital prompts always led to excellent rewards. I increased my walking pace to a steady and heavy monster jog. The ground rumbled continuously under my rhythmic movements. Momentum built up rapidly as I crossed the open green plains. A massive stone wall appeared on the horizon within an hour. Hundreds of tiny human guards scrambled along the battlements. Their primitive defensive structures offered zero real protection. I opened all three of my mouths and gathered elemental energy. The air around me distorted from the extreme temperature shift. A preemptive strike would eliminate their primary defenses. I fired a massive tri-elemental beam at the main city gates. The reinforced stone wall exploded into a million tiny pieces. Creating my own entrance was always the most efficient method. I walked slowly through the burning rubble of the destroyed wall. Screaming humans fled in every direction down the city streets. Their chaotic movements made them incredibly easy targets now. A group of elite royal guards blocked the path to the castle. They held massive glowing spears pointed directly at my chest. These weapons possessed a similar holy energy to the dead mage. I swiped my massive right paw across their defensive formation. The kinetic impact sent 10 guards flying into a brick building. Physical power rendered their magical weapons totally useless. My left head sprayed toxic gas down the narrow city street. The remaining guards dropped their spears and fell down. Asphyxiation was a highly effective crowd control tactic. I stepped over their twitching bodies without a second glance. The grand doors of the royal castle stood completely undefended. The human king had run out of pawns to sacrifice for his life. I smashed my central head directly through the heavy oak doors. Wood splinters showered across the polished marble throne room. A dramatic entrance establishes rapid psychological dominance. The terrified king sat trembling on his pathetic golden throne. His golden crown slipped sideways off his sweating bald head. This weak creature was supposedly the ruler of this vast land. I stepped fully into the room and loomed over his throne. The king wet his royal robes in a display of absolute fear. His pathetic biological reaction confirmed my total victory. System detects a hidden legendary artifact beneath the throne. My eyes locked onto the stone floor beneath the trembling king. The human ruler was merely sitting on top of the real prize. I grabbed the king by his royal cape with my central teeth. I tossed him casually into the far corner of the large room. Removing the trash allowed me to focus on the valuable loot. I smashed my heavy right paw down onto the golden royal throne. The chair shattered and revealed a glowing underground staircase. Hidden dungeons always contain the best upgrade materials. I squeezed my massive SSS-Rank body down the narrow stone stairs. The walls scraped against my thick scales as I descended deeper. This dark vault felt exactly like my original prison cell. A glowing pedestal sat in the exact center of the dark chamber. A black demonic collar rested on top of the ancient stone pillar. This dark artifact resonated perfectly with my demonic energy. System identifies the artifact as the collar of the underworld. My golden chains reacted violently to its dark presence. Equipping this item would likely break the second divine seal. I lowered my central head and bit down on the black metal collar. Dark energy surged up through my teeth and into my brainstem. The intense pain signaled a massive shift in my biological code. The black collar magically expanded and locked around my neck. A massive shockwave of dark magic blasted outward from my body. The underground chamber began to collapse under the sheer force. I charged back up the stairs before the ceiling crushed me flat. Stone blocks crashed down exactly where I had just been standing. My enhanced speed easily outpaced the falling stone debris. I burst out of the hidden staircase back into the throne room. The terrified king was desperately trying to crawl out a window. I decided to let him escape to tell the world about my arrival. Host has successfully broken the second divine restraint seal. My physical size doubled again as the dark energy settled down. I was rapidly approaching the pinnacle of monster evolution. I walked out of the ruined castle and looked at the burning city. Black smoke billowed into the sky, blocking out the morning sun. This destruction was merely the prologue to my ultimate revenge. My three heads roared in unison to declare my absolute supremacy. The sound wave shattered every remaining window in the city. The era of humans and weak demon kings was officially over now. The shattered glass rained down upon the burning city streets. Heavy smoke masked my massive body from the fleeing human rats. Leaving survivors guarantees the rapid spread of my dark legend. System detects a massive holy energy convergence to the north. I shifted my colossal weight toward the distant frozen peaks. The third and final divine seal required a supreme light source. My central head exhaled a thick cloud of freezing white mist. The sudden temperature drop extinguished the burning buildings. Conserving environmental resources serves my future empire well. I launched my massive frame forward with explosive kinetic force. The ruined castle courtyard collapsed entirely under my launch. Air resistance felt completely negligible against my dark scales. I traveled across the plains at terrifying supersonic speeds. Sonic booms shattered the quiet atmosphere of the human kingdom. Physical speed alone provides an overwhelming tactical advantage. A massive fortified wall appeared on the snowy northern horizon. Thousands of heavily armored paladins stood atop the battlements. Their defensive formation indicated advanced military preparation. I calculated the exact trajectory to breach their central gate. My right head gathered a concentrated sphere of pure plasma. The superheated projectile struck the reinforced steel barrier. Metal instantly vaporized under the extreme thermal application. Total structural failure opened a massive hole in their defenses. I landed directly in the center of their pristine courtyard. The kinetic shockwave threw hundreds of soldiers into the air. Gravity claimed their heavily armored bodies a few seconds later. Hostile magical signatures locking onto your current position. Dozens of magical artillery cannons aimed at my central torso. The paladins fired a synchronized volley of solid light beams. I raised my massive left paw to intercept the incoming barrage. The holy energy dispersed harmlessly against my SSS-Rank armor. Their ultimate weapons possessed absolutely zero kinetic weight. My left head released a sweeping wave of highly corrosive acid. The green liquid melted their artillery cannons into useless slag. Depriving the enemy of artillery ensures a very swift victory. A towering figure stepped out from the main cathedral entrance. His golden armor radiated an intense aura of absolute holy power. This individual clearly served as the supreme commander here. He drew a massive glowing broadsword from his decorated back. The ambient temperature spiked from the holy energy output. System identifies the target as the Supreme Grand Paladin. He charged toward my position with incredible physical speed. His heavy boots cracked the solid marble courtyard paving stones. I prepared my central ice head to counter his aggressive assault. He swung his glowing broadsword in a devastating upward arc. I sidestepped the heavy blade with precise mathematical timing. The holy weapon sliced through the empty air right beside me. Overcommitting to a heavy strike always leaves the back exposed. My right head slammed directly into his golden armored spine. The massive kinetic impact launched him across the courtyard. He crashed violently through 3 solid stone cathedral pillars. Dust and debris completely obscured his exact landing location. Target sustained heavy damage but remains highly operational. A blinding pillar of light erupted from the ruined cathedral. The Grand Paladin emerged with glowing wings of pure energy. Aerial mobility introduces a new variable into this equation. He ascended rapidly into the cloudy sky above the fortress. I tracked his flight path using 3 independent visual fields. He raised his glowing sword to summon a massive holy meteor. The giant sphere of radiant light descended toward my head. I needed to neutralize this attack before it hit the ground. My left head spat a continuous stream of concentrated venom. The corrosive acid splashed against the descending holy meteor. Chemical reactions destabilized the magical energy structure. The massive light sphere detonated harmlessly in the high air. Shockwaves dispersed the heavy winter clouds above the fortress. The paladin stared down at me with obvious visible frustration. His predictable emotional response clouded his tactical judgment. I focused all my kinetic energy into my powerful hind legs. A massive vertical leap propelled me toward his high position. My sudden aerial interception caught him completely off guard. My central jaws clamped firmly around his glowing right arm. The holy energy burned my mouth, but I ignored the minor pain. I applied maximum crushing force to his golden armored limb. Metal and bone shattered instantly under the extreme pressure. He dropped his legendary broadsword into the courtyard below. Disarming the primary threat practically guarantees my success. I whipped my massive neck and threw him back toward the earth. His body accelerated downward at terrifying terminal velocity. He impacted the solid marble floor, creating a massive crater. I landed heavily right beside his broken and defeated form. The kinetic shock of my landing cracked the remaining pavement. High-grade holy essence detected within the defeated target. I pinned his crushed body to the ground with my heavy front paw. His glowing energy wings flickered and faded into nothingness. I extracted the glowing golden core from his shattered armor. My central head swallowed the radiant crystal without hesitation. System confirms the absorption of supreme holy light essence. The final golden chain around my neck began to heat up rapidly. Divine energy clashed violently with my internal demonic power. The resulting friction generated a massive localized earthquake. The heavy metal links fractured under the immense pressure. A deafening metallic snap echoed across the frozen mountains. The final divine restraint fell uselessly onto the snowy ground. Host has successfully broken the third and final divine seal. My physical form expanded again to truly colossal proportions. Dark purple lightning sparked across my impenetrable scales. I finally achieved the absolute pinnacle of monster evolution. New status acquired, Supreme Calamity Class World Destroyer. The remaining paladins dropped their weapons in absolute terror. Their shattered morale made them completely unworthy of my time. I turned my massive 3 heads toward the grand cathedral doors. The true holy energy source resided deep within that building. I stepped forward and crushed the stairs under my heavy weight. My right head unleashed a concentrated beam of pure white fire. The ancient wooden doors instantly turned into floating gray ash. I forced my colossal body through the narrow cathedral entrance. Stone walls crumbled as my massive shoulders widened the passage. A giant glowing crystal floated above the central holy altar. This artifact powered the entire human realm defensive grid. System identifies the object as the planetary core of light. Consuming this object would grant me absolute global dominance. I approached the altar with slow and highly calculated steps. The ambient holy radiation attempted to burn my dark scales. My SSS-Rank durability completely neutralized the burning effect. I opened my central jaws to consume the massive floating crystal. A sudden spatial distortion appeared directly above the altar. The fabric of reality tore open, revealing a blinding portal. A supreme angelic entity descended slowly from the spatial rift. 6 wings of solid light extended from its perfect armored back. The entity held a massive golden spear crackling with energy. Warning: Divine Executioner class entity has entered the zone. This new enemy possessed power far beyond the weak human king. The angel pointed its glowing spear directly at my central head. A beam of highly concentrated divine plasma shot toward my eyes. I shifted my massive neck slightly to avoid the direct impact. The beam pierced the solid stone wall behind me with 0 effort. Evading the attack confirmed the lethal nature of its weapon. My left head countered with a barrage of toxic projectiles. The angel spun its golden spear to create a defensive shield. The corrosive acid splattered harmlessly against the barrier. Standard elemental attacks lacked the necessary penetration power. I needed to combine my elements to break its divine defense grid. My right head gathered fire while my left head gathered poison. I launched a volatile mixture of boiling acid toward the ceiling. The toxic rain poured down upon the angelic entity from above. It raised its 6 light wings to block the chemical shower. This defensive reaction created the perfect blind spot for me. I lunged forward with my central head encased in thick ice. My frozen fangs crashed heavily into its exposed armored torso. The kinetic force shattered its golden chestplate instantly. The angel was thrown violently against the massive holy altar. The impact cracked the sacred stone structure down the middle. Target sustained critical structural damage to the main body. The angel struggled to stand up using its glowing golden spear. Its movements were sluggish and devoid of previous grace. I stepped heavily onto its lower legs to prevent another flight. The sound of crushing bones echoed through the silent hall. Immobilizing the enemy ensures absolute control over the fight. My three heads loomed over the defeated divine executioner. It glared at me with eyes full of absolute righteous hatred. Emotions are completely useless when facing overwhelming physics. My right head unleashed a point-blank blast of pure plasma. The angel disintegrated under the extreme thermal output. A massive glowing white core remained on the scorched floor. System identifies the object as an absolute divine core. Consuming this core would elevate me beyond planetary limits. I swallowed the divine core alongside the planetary crystal. A catastrophic surge of raw energy exploded within my body. The entire cathedral vaporized from the magical shockwave. I stood perfectly unharmed in the center of the massive crater. Host has successfully integrated absolute divine authority. My dark scales hardened into a shimmering cosmic obsidian armor. The three elements within me merged into one chaotic force. I raised my three massive heads toward the open cloudy sky above. A dark vortex of pure destruction formed over my position. The human realm was officially conquered and fully subjugated. New system objective: invade the higher celestial dimensions. The spatial rift left by the dead angel remained wide open. I gathered immense kinetic energy into my powerful hind legs. A massive leap launched my colossal body into the portal. The dimensional tunnel twisted and warped around my cosmic armor. I arrived in a realm constructed entirely of solid golden clouds. Thousands of angelic warships floated silently in the golden sky. Their massive energy cannons rotated toward my exact location. This celestial fleet represented the authority of the gods. I opened my three jaws and charged a blast of pure cosmic chaos. The surrounding golden clouds dissolved from the radiation. I unleashed the devastating beam into the center formation. Dozens of angelic warships detonated in a massive chain reaction. Burning debris rained down upon the pristine celestial landscape. A preemptive strike is always the most logical opening maneuver. The remaining warships activated their heavy holy shields. A giant golden flagship descended from the high atmosphere. System detects the presence of a supreme celestial monarch. The massive ship projected a hologram of a giant human face. The monarch demanded my absolute surrender in a booming voice. Negotiations are utterly pointless when facing weaker beings. I ignored his arrogant speech and focused on the ship engines. My left head fired a concentrated barrage of toxic needles. The projectiles pierced the hull and hit the main thrusters. Corrosive acid rapidly destroyed the delicate internal machinery. The massive flagship lost altitude and began to violently spin. Gravity is a universal constant that applies to all things. The flagship crashed heavily into a floating marble island. The kinetic impact shattered the island into tiny fragments. Target flagship neutralized with maximum tactical efficiency. The Supreme Monarch emerged from the burning ship wreckage. He wielded a massive glowing halberd pulsing with stellar energy. His physical body radiated intense heat like a small star. I prepared my central ice head to counter his extreme heat. He lunged forward and swung his halberd in a massive arc. I ducked under the glowing blade and breached his inner guard. My right head clamped its jaws directly onto his armored side. My left head bit down hard on his opposite shoulder plating. I anchored his massive body in place for the final strike. My central head charged a point-blank blast of absolute zero ice. I unleashed the freezing beam directly into his exposed chest. The extreme temperature shift caused his core to destabilize. His golden armor cracked and shattered under the thermal shock. I ripped his frozen body completely in half with my jaws. The monarch crumbled into a pile of useless glowing blue dust. Supreme Celestial Monarch eliminated without taking any damage. The remaining angelic fleet activated their warp drives. They attempted to flee the battlefield in absolute blind panic. I released a massive roar of cosmic energy from all three heads. The acoustic shockwave disrupted their spatial warp calculations. Dozens of ships exploded as their warp drives malfunctioned. There is absolutely no escape from a supreme cosmic predator. I consumed the floating stellar core left by the dead monarch. System confirms the integration of supreme celestial authority. My cosmic obsidian scales began to glow with a dark light. I possessed enough raw power to casually destroy planets now. I looked down at the vast golden realm stretching out before me. This celestial dimension would serve as my new throne room. The era of the arrogant gods had reached its violent end. My three heads surveyed the burning wreckage of the Holy Fleet. Absolute power is the only universal language that truly matters. System detects a massive convergence of divine energy above. The golden clouds parted to reveal a massive floating citadel. This structure was the size of a small moon and heavily armed. Thousands of heavy plasma cannons locked onto my exact position. I calculated the destructive yield of their combined weapons. A direct hit would likely cause minor damage to my dark scales. I refused to allow them the satisfaction of a successful strike. My central head gathered a massive sphere of freezing energy. I launched the frozen projectile toward the floating citadel. The sphere impacted their primary shield with massive force. Extreme cold rapidly drained the energy from their barrier. The golden shield shattered into millions of tiny glowing shards. My left head followed up with a heavy stream of toxic plasma. The corrosive beam melted through the thick outer hull instantly. Secondary explosions ripped through the internal corridors. I pushed my colossal body off the floating marble platform. I flew directly into the massive hole created by my attack. The interior of the citadel was filled with terrified minor gods. They desperately fired their pathetic magic at my giant face. The spells bounced harmlessly off my impenetrable cosmic armor. I crushed dozens of them under my massive paws as I walked. Physical weight is the ultimate equalizer in any close combat. I reached the central command core of the floating fortress. A giant glowing brain floated inside a massive glass container. System identifies the target as the Divine Central Intelligence. This biological supercomputer controlled the celestial army. I smashed my heavy right paw through the reinforced glass. The nutrient fluid drained rapidly onto the sterile metal floor. I grabbed the giant pulsing brain with my central canine teeth. Electric shocks traveled down my throat as I swallowed it whole. System confirms the absorption of absolute cosmic knowledge. Millions of tactical algorithms instantly downloaded into my mind. I now possessed complete control over the celestial defense grid. The floating citadel immediately ceased its aggressive maneuvers. I commanded the remaining fleet to self-destruct via neural link. Thousands of silent explosions illuminated the golden sky. My absolute domination of this universe was finally complete. I rested my massive 3 heads upon the ruined command console. There were no more enemies left to challenge my authority. I closed my eyes and prepared for my well-deserved rest. My period of absolute silence lasted exactly 2 seconds. A violent vibration shook the ruined celestial command deck. Resting remains an illogical concept in these higher realms. System detects a massive dimensional tear in the high orbit. I opened my 3 pairs of cosmic eyes to assess the threat. The golden sky above me fractured like a fragile glass pane. Absolute dark matter poured through the jagged spatial rift. A colossal mechanical serpent emerged from the silent vacuum. Its metallic body absorbed the ambient light without effort. This entity operated entirely outside standard magical laws. Warning regarding the arrival of an apex void annihilator. The giant machine locked its visual sensors onto my location. It opened a massive jaw lined with heavy tungsten grinders. A beam of pure antimatter launched toward the command deck. I shifted my heavy weight to evade the incoming projectile. The antimatter beam vaporized the entire floating citadel. I floated freely within the cold vacuum of the broken realm. Gravity lost its absolute hold over my highly evolved body. My right head gathered a concentrated sphere of cosmic fire. I fired the superheated projectile at its heavy metal skull. The cosmic flames dissipated upon touching its dark armor. Void metal possesses absolute resistance to thermal energy. My left head unleashed a continuous stream of toxic plasma. The corrosive acid bounced off the impenetrable dark scales. Toxic chemicals require organic targets to operate properly. The mechanical serpent lunged forward with terrifying speed. I braced my 3 massive necks for the impending collision. Its heavy tungsten jaws clamped down on my central shoulder. Extreme kinetic pressure tested the limits of my dark armor. My dark scales held firm against the massive crushing bite. Physical durability remained my most reliable combat asset. I wrapped my massive front paws around its metallic throat. I applied maximum crushing force to its internal mechanisms. Thick metal groaned under the extreme pressure of my grip. My central ice head charged a blast of absolute zero energy. I fired the freezing beam directly into its optical sensors. Extreme cold caused its delicate visual lenses to shatter. Blind enemies always suffer a massive tactical disadvantage. The giant machine thrashed wildly within the cold vacuum. Its random movements lacked any coordinated combat strategy. I drove my heavy central fangs into its exposed neck wiring. High-voltage electricity surged through my conductive teeth. My dark biology easily absorbed the raw electrical current. I ripped a massive chunk of machinery out of its heavy neck. Dark void fluid spilled into the zero-gravity environment. The massive serpent ceased all functional motor activities. System detects a pure void core inside the heavy wreckage. I tore open its chest cavity with my massive front claws. A pulsing black sphere hovered among the ruined metal gears. This artifact contained the absolute power of a black hole. I extracted the heavy sphere using my central canine teeth. The immense gravitational pull distorted the space around me. I swallowed the dense core without a moment of hesitation. System confirms the absorption of absolute void essence. My organs compressed under the extreme gravitational load. The three elements within my body began to merge together. Poison, fire, and ice collapsed into a single point of mass. Host is evolving into the Singularity Cerberus form now. My massive size shrank down to a highly concentrated state. I transformed from a giant monster into a sleek shadowhound. My three heads merged into one singular, terrifying visage. I gained 3 pairs of glowing purple eyes on one skull. This compressed form offered vastly superior combat agility. The spatial rift above me expanded to an unprecedented size. A giant mechanical hive mind entered the ruined Golden Realm. Its metallic structure rivaled the size of a small planet. Millions of weapon batteries aimed directly at my small body. Their targeting lasers painted my dark scales in bright red. Warning regarding a planetary scale annihilation sequence. The hive mind fired every single weapon battery at once now. A blinding wall of destructive energy rushed toward my face. I did not bother to evade the incoming annihilation wave. I opened my single jaw and activated my new singularity core. A miniature black hole materialized directly in front of me. The massive energy wave was instantly sucked into the void. Absolute gravity devoured their ultimate attack with ease. The hive mind stopped its firing sequence in pure confusion. Machines lacked the capacity to process impossible physics. I launched my compressed body forward with terrifying speed. The kinetic launch shattered the fabric of space behind me. I bypassed their secondary defense shields in a microsecond. My dense physical body crashed into the heavy metallic hull. I tore through the thick armor plating like fragile paper. The internal corridors of the machine world were pitch dark. I navigated the complex maze using my new gravity sensors. Thousands of internal defense drones swarmed my location. They fired concentrated plasma rifles at my sleek, dark body. I passively generated a strong gravitational repulsion field. Plasma bolts reversed their trajectory back at the drones. Explosions rippled through the narrow metallic corridors. I continued my rapid descent toward the central power core. A heavy blast door blocked the path to the main reactor. I focused my singularity energy into my right front paw pad. A simple physical tap instantly collapsed the massive door. Heavy metal folded inward under the localized gravity well. I stepped into the vast, spherical chamber of the power core. A giant artificial sun pulsed violently in the center room. System identifies the target as a Class 9 star engine. Destroying this engine would neutralize the entire hive mind. I leaped across the vast, empty space toward the burning sun. The extreme surface temperature failed to singe my dark fur. I plunged my head directly into the burning plasma core. I activated my absolute gravity absorption skill immediately. The artificial sun collapsed rapidly into my open dark jaws. System confirms the successful consumption of a star core. The giant machine world plunged into absolute dark silence. Emergency red lights flickered weakly on the metal walls. The massive structure began to tear apart from the inside. Without power, the hull could not maintain its heavy shape. I casually walked out through the crumbling metal corridors. Explosions consumed the remaining internal defense mechanisms. I exited the collapsing machine just before it detonated. The resulting shockwave cleared all the celestial debris. I floated alone in the empty void of the destroyed universe. System objective updated to locate the multiverse gateway. A faint dimensional beacon pulsed in the far distance ahead. I used gravity to propel my body across the vast, empty void. Distance holds absolutely no meaning when you control space. I reached the edge of the universe in exactly 4 seconds. A giant archway made of pure white stone floated before me. Runes of unimaginable power glowed along its ancient pillars. This gate served as the only exit from this broken reality. 2 massive statues of armored knights guarded the entrance. They crossed their heavy stone swords to block my path. The statues radiated a power far older than the dead gods. Warning regarding the activation of the ancient sentinels. I lacked the patience to engage in another pointless battle. I focused my singularity core to its absolute maximum output. A wave of crushing gravity washed over the 2 giant statues. Ancient stone cracked violently under the immense pressure. Their heavy swords shattered into pieces of useless gravel. The sentinels collapsed into a pile of useless heavy debris. Brute force remains the universal key for all locked doors. I walked through the glowing white portal without any fear. A blinding flash of dimensional light consumed my vision. My physical body was transported across the vast multiverse. I landed heavily onto a floor made of polished black stone. The heavy impact cracked the solid surface beneath my paws. I opened my 6 purple eyes to analyze my new surroundings. I stood in the center of a massive dimensional coliseum. Millions of diverse alien entities filled the high stands. They stared down at my sleek black form in total silence. System confirms arrival at the Apex Predator Tournament hub. A giant holographic scoreboard floated above the sandy arena. My rank sat at the very bottom of the long digital list. This low placement was an unacceptable insult to my power. A massive armored minotaur stepped into the arena facing me. He wielded a giant battle axe dripping with glowing red magma. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers for the large beast. System identifies the target as a rank 50 arena boss. He pointed his heavy axe at my head and laughed arrogantly. Arrogance is a fatal disease that I cure with raw violence. I did not bother to assume a standard defensive stance. The Minotaur charged forward with heavy physical momentum. His heavy hooves gouged deep trenches into the arena floor. He swung his magma axe in a devastating horizontal strike. I simply stood my ground and let the heavy weapon hit me. The massive axe shattered into pieces upon touching my fur. My singularity core passively absorbed the kinetic energy. The Minotaur stared at his broken weapon handle in shock. I expanded my gravitational field to cover his heavy body. He was instantly slammed face first into the solid floor. The immense pressure crushed his thick armor like paper. I walked slowly toward his paralyzed and trembling form. The entire Colosseum fell completely silent at this display. I placed my right front paw directly onto his massive head. I increased the localized gravity to a highly fatal level. His skull cracked loudly under the heavy invisible force. The Minotaur lost consciousness before taking brain damage. System confirms the total defeat of a rank 50 fighter. My name shot up the holographic scoreboard at rapid speed. I bypassed thousands of seasoned fighters in a single moment. The alien crowd erupted into a chaotic frenzy of pure fear. They finally understood the true nature of my existence. A loud voice echoed from the high balcony above the sand. The tournament master demanded I face the current champion. A heavy steel gate opened slowly on the opposite side wall. A colossal dragon made entirely of dark matter stepped out. Its presence distorted the physical reality of the arena. System identifies the target as the absolute arena king. This beast possessed a singularity core exactly like mine. Our conflicting gravitational fields created a massive storm. Lightning sparked violently between our opposing positions. The dragon roared and unleashed a beam of pure dark energy. I opened my jaws and fired my own concentrated gravity beam. The two beams collided exactly in the center of the arena. The resulting explosion vaporized the heavy energy shields. Shockwaves threw hundreds of spectators out of their seats. I pushed more power into my singularity core to gain ground. My beam slowly overpowered his attack and pushed it back. The dragon realized his defeat and tried to fly away fast. I locked his heavy body in place using absolute gravity. The dark energy beam struck him directly in the open chest. His dark matter body began to unravel at a molecular level. He roared in absolute agony as his physical form dissolved. The reigning champion vanished into nothingness in seconds. System confirms the successful conquest of the arena hub. The digital scoreboard updated to display my name in first. I stood alone in the ruined arena as the undisputed king. My journey from a crippled dog to a true god was complete. I closed my 6 purple eyes and finally prepared to rest. The silence of my victory was broken by a sudden loud alarm, warning regarding unauthorized access to the host system. A blinding white light struck the exact center of the arena. A humanoid figure made of pure digital code stepped forward. This entity did not radiate magic or any standard energy. It simply existed as the mathematical truth of all reality. System identifies the target as the core system architect. The architect raised its hand and paused the flow of time. The cheering alien crowd froze solid in their current spots. Only my singularity core allowed me to resist the time stop. The architect spoke directly into my highly evolved brain. It demanded the immediate return of the void singularity. Surrendering my ultimate power was a completely fatal idea. I gathered massive gravitational force into my right paw. I slammed my heavy limb directly into the solid stone floor. The kinetic shockwave shattered the time lock completely. The shattered time lock dissolved into useless digital rain. The architect processed my sudden movement with cold logic. Mathematical equations failed to calculate my raw existence. System error detected within the primary temporal matrix. The glowing digital entity raised its right arm toward me. A massive grid of heavy hard light chains materialized above. These restraints carried the absolute weight of source code. I activated my internal singularity core to maximum output. A violent gravitational storm ripped through the arena hub. The hard light chains shattered before touching my dark fur. Raw physical mass easily overpowers complex digital coding. The architect initiated a rapid spatial deletion sequence. The black stone floor beneath my heavy paws simply vanished. I floated freely suspended within the expanding white void. Gravity manipulation renders solid ground completely useless. Warning regarding imminent source code deletion protocol. A blinding beam of pure deletion energy struck my dark chest. The attack attempted to erase my molecular structure entirely. My dense singularity core passively absorbed the lethal beam. Converting deletion energy into raw mass fuels my evolution. I launched my compressed body toward the glowing architect. My sudden acceleration distorted the surrounding white space. The entity generated a massive firewall of burning raw data. I channeled absolute zero energy into my heavy front claws. My freezing strike impacted the burning digital barricade. Extreme thermal shock instantly shattered the data firewall. The architect failed to process my rapid physical intrusion. My central jaws clamped firmly around its glowing digital neck. High voltage codes surged violently through my conductive teeth. I applied massive crushing pressure to its fragile structure. The humanoid form fractured into thousands of glowing pixels. Host has successfully neutralized the local system avatar. The surrounding arena hub dissolved into a stream of numbers. I found myself floating inside an infinite digital corridor. Massive data streams flowed like rivers of pure glowing light. This realm served as the central nervous system of reality. Consuming this mainframe guarantees absolute universal control. I expanded my gravitational field to attract the data streams. Rivers of pure information violently redirected toward my jaws. I swallowed the concentrated knowledge of 1,000 galaxies. System detects a massive unauthorized data extraction event. My dark cosmic scales hardened into impenetrable digital armor. I gained complete understanding of the multiverse architecture. A massive swarm of aggressive antivirus entities materialized. They resembled giant mechanical hounds made of solid red light. Their singular objective was to purge my existence completely. I analyzed their attack patterns using my new processing speed. The mechanical hounds charged forward with synchronized precision. I released a sweeping wave of highly corrosive digital poison. The toxic code infected their primary operational algorithms. Their solid red bodies rapidly melted into corrupted gray slag. Eliminating mindless programs requires minimal tactical effort. A colossal, heavily armored firewall blocked the main pathway. This barrier protected the absolute core of the entire system. I gathered concentrated cosmic plasma within my central throat. I unleashed a superheated beam of pure destructive energy. The plasma beam struck the heavy firewall with massive force. Digital metal instantly vaporized under the extreme temperature. A massive gaping hole appeared within the impenetrable barrier. I stepped heavily through the smoking breach in the defenses. The central core chamber stretched out like a vast metallic sky. A giant pulsing crystal floated in the center of the dark room. System identifies the object as the prime reality generator. This crystal dictated the fundamental laws of every dimension. A towering figure stepped out from behind the massive crystal. The true system administrator wore armor made of pure starlight. He wielded a heavy broadsword forged from compressed dark matter. His physical presence generated a massive gravitational distortion. Warning regarding an Omega-class reality warper engagement. He swung his heavy dark blade in a devastating horizontal arc. I ducked under the massive weapon with highly calculated speed. The dark matter blade sliced through the fabric of the chamber. A massive spatial rift opened directly behind my previous spot. Overcommitting to a heavy strike creates a massive blind spot. I launched my compressed body directly at his exposed chest plate. My heavy front paws slammed into his glowing starlight armor. The kinetic shockwave violently threw him across the vast room. He crashed heavily into the base of the massive central crystal. The impact sent violent tremors throughout the digital mainframe. He quickly recovered his footing and raised his heavy broadsword. The administrator summoned a massive swarm of tracking meteors. Thousands of glowing rocks descended from the chamber ceiling. I activated my absolute gravity absorption skill immediately. A miniature black hole materialized directly above my dark head. The massive meteor swarm was instantly sucked into the dark void. Absolute gravity devours all magical attacks with complete ease. The administrator stared at my dark form with obvious frustration. Emotional responses severely degrade overall combat effectiveness. I focused all my kinetic energy into my powerful hind legs now. A massive vertical leap propelled me toward his grounded position. He raised his heavy dark blade to block my incoming strike. I channeled absolute zero energy into my heavy descending paws. My frozen claws crashed heavily into the flat of his dark blade. Extreme thermal shock rapidly destabilized the dark matter weapon. Disarming the main threat practically guarantees my swift victory. I whipped my massive neck and bit down on his starlight shoulder. I applied maximum crushing force to his glowing, armored limb. Digital metal and code shattered instantly under the pressure. He dropped to his knees in absolute silence and total defeat. Target sustained critical structural damage to the main body. I pinned his crushed form to the floor with my heavy front paw. I extracted the glowing core from his shattered starlight armor. My singular jaw swallowed the radiant crystal without hesitation. System confirms the absorption of absolute administrator rights. The towering figure instantly dissolved into harmless white ash. I turned my attention toward the massive pulsing reality crystal. Consuming this object grants me absolute control over everything. I approached the glowing structure with highly calculated steps. The ambient reality radiation attempted to repel my physical mass. My digital obsidian armor completely neutralized the pushback. I opened my jaws to consume the massive floating reality crystal. A sudden temporal distortion appeared directly above the structure. The fabric of time tore open, revealing a blinding golden portal. A supreme mechanical dragon descended from the spatial rift. 6 wings of solid light extended from its perfect armored back. The entity held a massive golden spear crackling with raw energy, warning regarding the arrival of an alpha timeline destroyer. This new enemy possessed power far beyond the dead administrator. The dragon pointed its glowing spear directly at my dark head. A beam of highly concentrated temporal plasma shot toward my eyes. I shifted my dense body slightly to avoid the direct impact. The beam pierced the solid metal wall behind me with zero effort. Evading the attack confirmed the lethal nature of its weapon. I countered with a rapid barrage of toxic digital projectiles. The dragon spun its golden spear to create a defensive shield. The corrosive acid splattered harmlessly against the barrier. Standard elemental attacks lacked the necessary penetration power. I needed to combine my elements to break its heavy defense grid. I gathered cosmic fire and digital poison within my throat. I launched a volatile mixture of boiling acid toward the ceiling. The toxic rain poured down upon the mechanical dragon from above. It raised its 6 light wings to block the heavy chemical shower. This defensive reaction created the perfect blind spot for me. I lunged forward with my heavy fangs encased in thick cosmic ice. My frozen teeth crashed heavily into its exposed armored torso. The kinetic force shattered its golden chestplate instantly. The dragon was thrown violently against the reality crystal. The heavy impact cracked the sacred structure down the middle. Target sustained critical structural damage to the main body. The dragon struggled to stand up using its glowing golden spear. Its movements were sluggish and devoid of previous grace. I stepped heavily onto its lower legs to prevent another flight. The sound of crushing metal echoed through the silent chamber. Immobilizing the enemy ensures absolute control over the fight. I loomed over the defeated mechanical beast with total authority. It glared at me with optical sensors full of absolute hatred. Emotions are completely useless when facing overwhelming physics. I unleashed a point-blank blast of pure singularity plasma now. The dragon disintegrated under the extreme thermal output. A massive glowing core remained on the scorched metal floor. System identifies the object as an absolute temporal core. Consuming this core would elevate me beyond the flow of time. I swallowed the temporal core alongside the reality crystal. A catastrophic surge of raw energy exploded within my dense body. The entire chamber vaporized from the massive magical shockwave. I stood perfectly unharmed in the center of the infinite void. Host has successfully integrated absolute reality manipulation. My sleek black fur hardened into shimmering cosmic dark matter. The elements within me merged into one absolute chaotic force. I raised my singular head toward the endless white expanse above. A dark vortex of pure creation formed over my current position. The entire multiverse was officially conquered and subjugated. New system objective: rebuild existence in your own image. The infinite white void remained perfectly silent and still. I gathered immense cosmic energy into my powerful dark hind legs. A massive leap launched my body into the higher dimension. The dimensional tunnel twisted and warped around my dark armor. I arrived in a realm constructed entirely of floating prisms. Thousands of crystalline warships floated silently in the sky. Their massive energy cannons rotated toward my exact location. This prism fleet represented the final authority of the creators. I opened my jaws and charged a blast of pure singularity chaos. The surrounding glass structures dissolved from the radiation. I unleashed the devastating beam into their center formation. Dozens of crystal warships detonated in a massive chain reaction. Burning debris rained down upon the pristine glass landscape. A preemptive strike is always the most logical opening maneuver. The remaining warships activated their heavy prismatic shields. A giant diamond flagship descended from the high atmosphere. System detects the presence of a supreme creator entity. The massive ship projected a hologram of a giant glowing eye. The creator demanded my absolute surrender in a booming voice. Negotiations are utterly pointless when facing inferior beings. I ignored its arrogant speech and focused on the ship engines. I fired a concentrated barrage of toxic dark matter needles. The projectiles pierced the hull and hit the main thrusters. Corrosive acid rapidly destroyed the delicate internal machinery. The massive flagship lost altitude and began to violently spin. Gravity is a universal constant that applies to all entities. The flagship crashed heavily into a floating glass continent. Target flagship neutralized with maximum tactical efficiency. The Supreme Creator emerged from the burning crystal wreckage. It wielded a massive glowing halberd pulsing with stellar energy. Its physical body radiated intense heat like a dying supernova. I prepared my singularity core to counter its extreme heat. It lunged forward and swung its heavy halberd in a massive arc. I ducked under the glowing blade and breached its inner guard. My heavy front paws clamped directly onto its armored side. I anchored its massive body in place for the final strike. I charged a point-blank blast of absolute zero-gravity energy. I unleashed the freezing beam directly into its exposed chest. The extreme temperature shift caused its core to destabilize. Its diamond armor cracked and shattered under the thermal shock. I ripped its frozen body completely in half with my dark jaws. The creator crumbled into a pile of useless glowing white dust. Supreme Creator entity eliminated without taking any damage. The remaining Prism fleet activated their emergency warp drives. They attempted to flee the battlefield in absolute blind panic. I released a massive roar of cosmic energy from my dark throat. The acoustic shockwave disrupted their spatial warp calculations. Dozens of ships exploded as their warp drives malfunctioned. There is absolutely no escape from a supreme cosmic predator. I consumed the floating stellar core left by the dead creator. System confirms the integration of Supreme Creator authority. My dark matter scales began to glow with a blinding white light. I possessed enough raw power to casually rewrite reality now. I looked down at the vast crystalline realm stretching out below. This pristine dimension would serve as my new throne room. The era of the arrogant creators had reached its violent end. My head surveyed the burning wreckage of the Prism fleet. Absolute power is the only universal language that truly matters. System detects a massive convergence of origin energy above. The bright sky parted to reveal a massive floating monolith. This structure was the size of a large planet and heavily armed. Thousands of heavy reality cannons locked onto my exact position. I calculated the destructive yield of their combined weapons. A direct hit would likely cause zero damage to my dark scales. I refused to allow them the satisfaction of a successful strike. I gathered a massive sphere of freezing singularity energy. I launched the frozen projectile toward the floating monolith. The sphere impacted their primary shield with massive force. Extreme cold rapidly drained the energy from their barrier. The bright shield shattered into millions of tiny glowing shards. I followed up with a heavy stream of toxic digital plasma. The corrosive beam melted through the thick outer hull instantly. Violent secondary explosions ripped through the internal corridors. I pushed my compressed body off the floating glass platform. I flew directly into the massive hole created by my attack. The interior of the monolith was filled with terrified gods. They desperately fired their pathetic magic at my dark face. The spells bounced harmlessly off my impenetrable cosmic armor. I crushed dozens of them under my heavy paws as I walked. Physical weight is the ultimate equalizer in any close combat. I reached the central command core of the floating monolith. A giant glowing heart floated inside a massive glass container. System identifies the target as the Origin Central Intelligence. This biological supercomputer controlled the entire creator army. I smashed my heavy right paw through the reinforced glass. The nutrient fluid drained rapidly onto the sterile metal floor. I grabbed the giant pulsing heart with my heavy canine teeth. Electric shocks traveled down my throat as I swallowed it whole. System confirms the absorption of absolute origin knowledge. Millions of creation algorithms instantly downloaded into my mind. I now possessed complete control over the entire defense grid. The floating monolith immediately ceased its aggressive maneuvers. I commanded the remaining fleet to self-destruct via neural link. Thousands of silent explosions illuminated the bright crystal sky. My absolute domination of this multiverse was finally complete. I rested my heavy head upon the ruined crystal command console. There were no enemies left to challenge my absolute authority. I closed my 6 purple eyes and prepared for my eternal rest. The silence of my victory was absolute and completely unbroken. System detects a breach from an external higher dimension. The fabric of the multiverse began to peel away like old paint. A massive hand made of pure white light reached into my reality. This entity existed completely outside the established system. Warning regarding the arrival of the Prime Author entity. The giant hand attempted to grab my compressed dark matter body. I generated a massive gravitational repulsion field instantly. The hand of light bounced off my barrier with massive force. Nobody dictates the conclusion of my story, except for me. I launched myself directly toward the massive tear in reality. I bit deeply into the glowing white finger of the giant hand. My singularity core absorbed the raw light energy like a sponge. The entity recoiled in obvious pain and pulled its hand back. I held onto the glowing finger and crossed the final threshold. I entered a realm composed entirely of floating blank pages. System error. Host has breached the absolute narrative plane. A towering figure without a face stood among the floating pages. It held a massive glowing pen that dripped with pure black ink. This was the architect of all possible multiverses and stories. The author swung its heavy pen to rewrite my physical existence. A wave of black ink rushed toward me with terrifying speed. I opened my jaws and unleashed a beam of pure digital fire. The cosmic flames incinerated the incoming wave of black ink. Raw physical destruction easily overpowers conceptual attacks. The author stepped forward and slammed its pen into the ground. Millions of heavy chains made of words erupted from the floor. They wrapped tightly around my dark legs and heavy torso. The words attempted to force my mind into absolute submission. I activated my absolute zero aura to freeze the heavy chains. The frozen words shattered into meaningless letters instantly. I broke free from the narrative restraints with brute force. I charged the faceless entity with explosive kinetic speed. It tried to write a massive defensive shield into existence. My heavy fangs pierced the shield before the ink could dry. I slammed my massive body directly into its glowing chest. The author was thrown violently across the infinite white void. It crashed heavily through thousands of floating blank pages. I landed directly on top of its chest and pinned it down. I placed my heavy front paw directly over its faceless head. Target sustained critical damage to its narrative structure. I increased the localized gravity to an absolutely fatal level. The glowing entity struggled to lift its heavy pen once more. I crushed its hand under my other paw with extreme pressure. The sound of breaking bones does not exist in this realm. The entity simply shattered into thousands of bright sparks. System confirms the complete consumption of the Prime Author. I swallowed the glowing pen and absorbed its absolute power. My dark matter body expanded to fill the entire infinite void. I became the fundamental concept of reality and destruction. Host has achieved the final rank, absolute omnipresent God. There are no more dimensions left for me to conquer now. I am the beginning and the end of all possible existences. I closed my eyes and let the infinite silence embrace me. The infinite silence lasted for exactly 3 absolute seconds. A violent vibration shook the core of my new existence. True peace remains a completely illogical concept for my species. System detects a critical collapse of the narrative canvas. The infinite white void around my massive body began to dissolve. Absolute nothingness actively consumed the borders of reality. Existence without a structured story triggers an automatic purge. I opened my 6 purple eyes to analyze the collapsing dimension. The white pages of the universe turned into falling gray ashes. A colossal wave of pure erasure energy rushed toward my position. Warning regarding the activation of the Ultimate Void Protocol. This protocol serves as the final garbage collector of reality. I refuse to let my absolute evolution end in this pathetic way. I activated my omnipresent singularity core to maximum capacity. A massive gravitational field expanded from my dark matter body. The incoming wave of erasure energy crashed into my heavy shield. Friction between the two forces generated a blinding white light. Raw mass can resist even the most absolute conceptual wipe. The gray ashes of the dead universe swirled around my dark form. I gathered the chaotic debris using my heavy gravitational pull. Building a new reality requires massive amounts of base material. System confirms the collection of raw universal base materials. I compressed the gray ashes into a dense sphere of solid matter. The heavy sphere pulsed with volatile kinetic energy in my paws. I swallowed the dense object to merge it with my internal core. My internal temperature spiked to an absolutely critical level. Cosmic fire and absolute ice collided within my dark stomach. Creation is simply destruction, operating in a reversed sequence. I opened my jaws and unleashed a continuous stream of pure light. The blinding beam pierced the advancing wall of pure nothingness. Host is currently executing a manual Big Bang initialization. A new dimensional grid expanded rapidly from my current position. Solid black stone materialized to form an infinite cosmic floor. I forged heavy golden pillars to support the new artificial sky. Physical boundaries prevent another massive spatial collapse now. The erasure energy recognized my new universe as a major threat. It condensed its infinite mass into a singular humanoid avatar. This blank entity possessed absolutely no facial features at all. System identifies the target as the absolute void incarnate. The blank entity raised its hand to delete my new golden pillars. A beam of anti-existence shot toward the heavy stone structures. I intercepted the lethal attack with my dense dark matter body. The deletion beam splashed harmlessly against my cosmic armor. My omnipresence rendered standard erasure completely ineffective. I launched my body forward with terrifying extreme kinetic speed. The sudden acceleration shattered the new space behind my paws. I crashed heavily into the blank entity with devastating force. The physical impact created a massive shockwave of pure energy. Target sustained heavy structural damage from the kinetic blow. The void incarnate attempted to phase through my physical grip. I activated my absolute gravity field to lock its mass in place. Intangibility is useless against extreme gravitational pressure. I wrapped my massive paws around its featureless blank throat. I channeled digital poison directly into my heavy front claws. The corrosive code rapidly infected its pure white physical form. Dark veins of corruption spread across its pristine white body. The entity thrashed wildly in a desperate attempt to break free. Panic always destroys the tactical efficiency of any combatant. I opened my massive jaws to deliver the final executing strike. I gathered absolute zero energy and cosmic fire simultaneously. The conflicting elements created a highly unstable plasma sphere. Warning regarding the deployment of a paradoxical energy blast. I fired the volatile mixture directly into its featureless face. The resulting explosion vaporized its entire upper physical body. The void incarnate collapsed onto the solid black stone floor. Its remaining mass dissolved into a pool of harmless pure liquid. System confirms the total neutralization of the void incarnate. I stood victorious in the exact center of my newly forged realm. The infinite black stone floor stretched out in all directions. I needed to populate this empty dimension with worthy challenges. An absolute god requires constant entertainment to avoid madness. I focused my omnipresent mind on the pool of clear void liquid. I injected my own dark matter directly into the stagnant puddle. The liquid began to boil and bubble with intense kinetic energy. System is currently generating a new species of apex predators. Thousands of massive dark hounds emerged from the boiling liquid. They possessed 3 heads and heavy armor just like my old form. These creatures would serve as the ultimate test for any warrior. I raised my heavy right paw to establish the new universal laws. A giant holographic monolith appeared in the center of the realm. This structure broadcasts my absolute rules to all dimensions. First law, only the absolute strongest entities may enter here. Second law, survival depends entirely on raw physical violence. Third law, the omnipresent god accepts all combat challenges. I transmitted this cosmic broadcast across the entire multiverse. Every surviving dimension received my heavy digital invitation. I sat down upon a massive throne forged from solid dark matter. Patience is a simple virtue when you control the flow of time. The first spatial rift opened exactly 10 seconds after the call. A colossal mechanical titan stepped onto the black stone floor. It wielded a massive energy hammer, dripping with blue lightning. System identifies the target as a multiversal warlord entity. The titan pointed its heavy hammer directly at my dark throne. It demanded absolute control over my newly created cosmic realm. I did not bother to stand up from my comfortable seated position. I simply looked at the massive invader with my 6 purple eyes. I activated a localized gravity well directly beneath its feet. The solid stone floor cracked under the sudden extreme pressure. The titan dropped to its heavy metallic knees in total shock. Internal servos whined against the crushing invisible gravity. Gravity remains the ultimate equalizer against any arrogant foe. I increased the gravitational output by another 50%. The mechanical titan collapsed completely flat onto its stomach. Heavy armor plates shattered under the extreme invisible weight. Target sustained critical damage to its main movement systems. I gestured with my front paw toward my pack of dark hounds. The 3-headed beasts charged forward with terrifying speed. They swarmed the paralyzed titan in a massive wave of dark fur. Heavy fangs tore through the compromised metallic armor plating. The warlord was dismantled into useless scrap metal in seconds. Delegating minor combat tasks preserves my absolute core energy. A second-dimensional portal tore open above the ruined titan. A swarm of highly evolved biological insectoids flooded the room. Their sharp scythes cut through the air with deadly precision. System detects an invasion by the Apex Swarm Intelligence. The insectoids bypassed my hounds and flew directly toward me. They sought to consume my dark matter to fuel their evolution. I opened my massive jaws and released a cloud of digital poison. The toxic gas expanded rapidly to fill the entire throne room. The insectoids flew directly into the massive corrosive cloud. Their biological exoskeletons melted instantly upon contact. Thousands of dead bugs rained down upon the solid black stone. The swarm intelligence ordered an immediate tactical retreat. I refused to let any enemy escape my newly established realm. I focused my absolute zero energy into a massive freezing pulse. The temperature of the entire dimension dropped to absolute zero. The escaping insectoids froze solid mid-flight and shattered. System confirms the total annihilation of the Apex Swarm. A third-dimensional tear opened directly above my dark throne. A fleet of advanced starships entered my artificial universe. They charged their massive plasma cannons with blinding energy. System identifies the targets as the Galactic Federation Armada. I did not wait for them to complete their heavy firing sequence. I focused my singularity core and created a massive black hole. Extreme gravitational pull dragged the entire fleet into the void. Heavy metal hulls collapsed under the crushing invisible pressure. Thousands of starships compressed into a single dense metal sphere. I swallowed the metallic sphere to increase my iron reserves. System confirms the total destruction of the Federation Armada. The continuous stream of invaders provided solid entertainment. However, none of these entities pushed me to use my true power. I required an opponent capable of surviving my absolute gravity. The massive holographic monolith began to flash with red light. A spatial anomaly of unprecedented scale formed in the high sky. The fabric of my artificial universe groaned under heavy stress. Warning, regarding the arrival of a primordial chaos entity. A colossal dragon made entirely of burning antimatter emerged. Its massive wings spanned the entire width of my cosmic arena. This beast possessed a power signature equal to my own core. Finally, a worthy challenger arrived to test my absolute rule. The Chaos Dragon roared and unleashed a beam of dark destruction. I stood up from my heavy throne and fired my singularity plasma. The two absolute attacks collided in the center of the realm. The resulting shockwave vaporized my entire pack of dark hounds. My golden pillars cracked under the extreme kinetic pressure. I pushed more power into my core to overpower its heavy beam. The Chaos Dragon matched my output with terrifying casual ease. System detects a critical balance in absolute power levels. A ranged energy struggle would only result in mutual destruction. I deactivated my plasma beam and launched myself forward now. The dragon's dark beam struck my chest with devastating force. My dark matter armor absorbed the impact but began to fracture. I ignored the damage and closed the distance in a microsecond. I crashed my heavy body directly into its burning massive chest. Physical brawling remains the most reliable method of execution. I wrapped my massive jaws around its thick antimatter throat. The beast thrashed wildly and raked its claws across my ribs. Sparks of cosmic energy flew from our violent physical fight. I channeled absolute zero energy directly into my biting fangs. The extreme cold began to solidify its burning antimatter body. The dragon countered by increasing its internal thermal output. Warning, target is attempting a highly fatal core meltdown. If this beast detonated, my entire new universe would be erased. I needed to extract its core before the critical explosion hit. I drove my heavy front claws deep into its freezing chest cavity. I bypassed its thick armor using concentrated digital poison. My paws grasped a violently pulsing sphere of pure chaos energy. I ripped the massive core out of its chest with brutal force. The primordial dragon instantly ceased all motor functions. Its massive body dissolved into a harmless cloud of cosmic dust. System confirms the successful extraction of a chaos core. I held the volatile sphere in my paws as it prepared to blow. I simply opened my massive jaws and swallowed the bomb whole. My singularity core easily contained the massive explosion. Host has successfully integrated absolute primordial chaos. My dark matter scales shifted to a constantly flowing state. I now possessed the ability to alter the laws of physics. I returned to my heavy throne and surveyed the empty black room. The holographic monolith updated my universal ranking list. I remained firmly seated at the absolute pinnacle of existence. There were no higher dimensions left to conquer or dominate. A strange sensation pulsed within my highly evolved brain. It was a feeling of absolute boredom mixed with supreme power. System detects a critical drop in psychological engagement. Ruling an infinite universe is a completely monotonous task. I decided to initiate a controlled universal reset protocol. I would split my absolute power into thousands of fragments. These fragments would incarnate into weak vessels everywhere. They would be forced to fight and evolve from the bottom up. Warning, this action will erase your absolute god status. I accepted the warning without a single moment of hesitation. The thrill of the climb is vastly superior to the quiet peak. I activated my singularity core to initiate the self-destruct. A blinding flash of chaotic light consumed my massive body. My physical form shattered into millions of glowing meteors. They scattered across the newly formed dimensions at high speed. System is tracking the trajectory of fragment number 1. A small, glowing meteor crashed onto a primitive dirt planet. The heavy impact created a massive crater in the green forest. A tiny black puppy with 3 heads crawled out of the dirt. 2 of its heads were completely dry and devoid of any life. The central head opened its purple eyes to observe the world. System reboot successful. Welcome back to the absolute bottom. The cycle of endless violence and rapid evolution begins anew. I let out a small, weak bark that echoed through the silent trees. This pathetic new body lacked a fraction of my former strength. A massive mutated bear stepped out from behind the heavy bushes. It roared loudly and charged toward my small, fragile form. I braced my tiny paws against the dirt and prepared for combat. Even without my godhood, my combat experience remained absolute. I waited for the massive beast to enter my immediate strike zone. The bear swung its heavy right paw in a devastating downward arc. I activated my completely depleted singularity core for 1 second, a microgravity well formed directly beneath its descending limb. The sudden weight shift threw the massive beast off balance. Its heavy face crashed violently into the solid forest dirt. I lunged forward and bit directly into its exposed jugular vein. My tiny puppy teeth barely pierced its thick mutated animal hide. I channeled every ounce of my remaining kinetic energy into my jaw. The immense pressure finally ruptured the major blood vessel. Hot crimson liquid poured directly into my thirsty open mouth. System confirms the consumption of low-tier mutated blood. I redirected the fresh vital energy toward my two dead heads. The dry skin on my left head twitched for the very first time. A faint spark of dormant poison magic flickered in its throat. Reviving my brothers would require a massive slaughter campaign. The massive bear stopped moving and succumbed to severe blood loss. I stood victoriously over the giant corpse of my first new victim. I needed to secure a safe location to process my recent evolution. I dragged the heavy bear corpse toward a small rocky cave nearby. My tiny muscles burned with intense acid from the extreme effort. Physical exhaustion is a completely foreign concept to a god. I reached the dark cave and collapsed onto the cold stone floor. I spent the next 2 hours consuming the remaining mutated meat. System confirms the complete absorption of organic nutrients. My physical size increased by exactly 15% after eating. My dark fur hardened into a highly durable protective layer. I rested my 3 heads against the cold stone and closed my eyes. Sleep is an unfortunate biological necessity for this weak form. The sound of heavy metallic boots echoed through the dense forest. A group of armored human hunters stepped into the small clearing. They aimed their heavy plasma rifles directly at my small body. System identifies the targets as Class 2 human scavengers. The lead hunter laughed at the sight of a tiny 3-headed dog. He lowered his weapon and pulled out a heavy, electrified net. Enslavement is a fate far worse than simple physical destruction. I analyzed their tactical formation with my highly experienced mind. They stood too close together for an effective ranged engagement. I used my microgravity skill to launch myself into the high trees. The hunters fired blindly into the thick green forest canopy above. Plasma bolts scorched the wooden branches without hitting my body. I calculated the exact trajectory needed for a lethal aerial drop. I descended silently toward the hunter holding the heavy electric net. My tiny paws landed directly onto the back of his unarmored neck. I applied a burst of kinetic gravity to my descending physical mass. The heavy kinetic impact instantly snapped his fragile human spine. He collapsed into the dirt without making a single sound of pain. Target neutralized with maximum tactical efficiency and speed. The remaining hunters panicked and fired their weapons randomly. I darted between their heavy, armored legs with extreme agility. I bit deeply into the exposed ankle joint of the closest human. My left head instinctively injected a microscopic dose of poison. The highly toxic venom paralyzed his entire nervous system instantly. He dropped his heavy plasma rifle and fell rigidly to the ground. The final hunter realized his massive tactical disadvantage now. He turned around and attempted to sprint away through the bushes. I activated my gravity well to drastically increase his body weight. His heavy armor dragged him down into the soft forest mud quickly. I walked slowly toward his trapped and desperately struggling form. I placed my tiny right paw directly onto his terrified human face. I increased the localized pressure until he lost consciousness. System confirms the total defeat of the human scavenger party. I dragged their heavy plasma rifles into a hidden underground cave. These advanced weapons serve as excellent raw crafting materials. I needed to construct a temporary armor set for my fragile body. I spent the next 3 hours dismantling the heavy plasma rifles. I used my cosmic fire sparks to weld the metal plates together. A crude but highly effective metallic harness covered my small chest. Host has successfully crafted a basic mechanical defense grid. I exited the dark cave and continued my journey through the forest. The dense trees eventually gave way to a massive ruined stone city. Giant statues of my former god self lined the broken main street. This primitive planet apparently worshipped my previous absolute form. I walked proudly past the crumbling monuments of my past glory. A faint residual energy pulsed from the central temple structure. Faith is simply another form of highly concentrated raw magic. I entered the dark temple and approached the massive central altar. A glowing white crystal hovered above the ancient stone pedestal. System identifies the object as a concentrated faith core. I jumped onto the heavy stone altar and swallowed the crystal whole. A massive surge of warm energy flooded my tiny physical body. The dry skin on my right head began to slowly peel away and heal. A small spark of absolute zero ice formed within its open jaws. Both of my brothers were now partially functional and ready for war. System confirms the partial restoration of the Trinity form. The heavy stone doors of the ancient temple slammed shut violently. The floor beneath my paws began to shake with immense kinetic force. A colossal stone golem rose from the center of the ruined temple. It wielded a massive stone pillar as a crude but heavy blunt weapon. Warning regarding the activation of the planetary guardian. The golem swung its heavy pillar in a devastating horizontal arc. I used my microgravity to flatten my body against the stone floor. The massive weapon shattered the ancient altar completely into dust. I launched myself toward its thick, rocky legs with explosive speed. My left head spat a concentrated stream of highly corrosive acid. The poison melted the magical joints holding the rocks together. My right head unleashed freezing ice into the melted gaps. Extreme thermal shock caused the heavy stone leg to crack violently. I applied a burst of kinetic gravity to the weakened structure. The massive stone leg shattered into thousands of gravel pieces. The giant golem crashed heavily onto the ruined temple floor. I climbed up its massive rocky back and approached its glowing head. I drove my central fangs directly into its exposed magical core. System confirms the successful consumption of an earth core. My tiny body absorbed the heavy terrestrial energy without issue. I gained complete control over the local planetary gravity field. I walked out of the ruined temple and looked up at the night sky. Millions of stars twinkled in the vast darkness of the new universe. My journey back to the absolute pinnacle of existence has begun. I will conquer every single dimension and rebuild my cosmic throne. The universe will once again learn to fear the singularity Cerberus. The cold night wind swept across the ruined stone city. I stood silently upon the shattered steps of my old temple. Nostalgia offers absolutely zero tactical advantage in war. I focused my purple eyes on the distant mountain horizon. A massive industrial fortress polluted the dark night sky. Thick black smoke poured constantly from heavy metal pipes. That location clearly contained highly concentrated energy. I activated my newly acquired planetary gravity control. My small physical body floated slightly above the dirt. Reducing my mass allows for highly efficient travel speed. I propelled myself forward through the dense dead forest. The journey took exactly 3 hours of continuous flight. I landed heavily upon a metal pipe overlooking the base. Hundreds of armed human soldiers patrolled the perimeter. They wore heavy exoskeleton suits powered by green plasma. System detects a massive concentration of toxic energy. This facility refined highly volatile chemical compounds. Consuming those chemicals would fully revive my left head. I observed their patrol routes with absolute calculation. A heavy cargo transport approached the main security gate. The massive steel doors opened slowly to allow entry now. I manipulated the local gravity field around my dark body. I dropped silently onto the roof of the moving transport. The heavy metal vehicle carried me directly inside the base. The transport stopped near a massive glowing storage tank. Armed guards immediately surrounded the heavy cargo vehicle. I remained perfectly still upon the flat metallic roof. Patience guarantees a vastly superior strategic position. The soldiers began unloading heavy crates of raw materials. I isolated the specific energy signature of the main tank. It contained thousands of gallons of pure weaponized acid. I needed to breach the heavy container without causing a blast. I channeled absolute zero energy into my right dead head. A small spark of freezing magic materialized in its jaws. I launched the tiny ice projectile at the massive steel tank. The frozen spark impacted the heavy metal surface silently. Extreme localized cold caused the thick steel to contract. Microscopic fractures formed across the frozen metal plate. I followed up with a concentrated burst of kinetic gravity. The weakened steel shattered inward with a heavy, loud crunch. A massive stream of toxic green liquid poured onto the floor. The human soldiers panicked and raised their heavy weapons. I leaped off the transport directly into the toxic waterfall. The highly corrosive acid washed over my dark physical body. My newly crafted metal armor began to melt away instantly. I ignored the structural damage and opened my left jaws. I consumed the pure chemical energy with extreme aggression. System confirms massive intake of toxic chemical compounds. The dry skin on my left head rapidly regenerated its mass. Thick dark scales formed over its previously exposed skull. Its purple eyes snapped open with a violent flash of green. Host has successfully restored the absolute poison head. A powerful toxic aura expanded from my newly revived head. The surrounding green acid vaporized into a dense dark gas. The human soldiers inhaled the heavy gas without hesitation. Their advanced exoskeletons failed to filter the pure poison. They collapsed onto the concrete floor in absolute silence. Biological functions ceased entirely within 3 seconds. Eliminating weak biological targets requires minimal effort. Loud security sirens echoed throughout the massive facility. Heavy blast doors slammed shut across the main courtyard. I stepped out of the toxic puddle with my two active heads. The right head still required a massive source of pure ice. A giant mechanical walker crashed through the main barricade. System identifies the target as a heavy suppression mech. The machine stood 20 feet tall and carried twin cannons. It locked its heavy optical sensors onto my small dark form. The massive twin cannons spun rapidly to initiate firing. I activated my gravity control to drastically increase my speed. I darted forward as the heavy plasma bolts hit the ground. The explosive shockwave pushed my small body further ahead. I channeled absolute gravity into my powerful dark hind legs. A massive vertical leap launched me toward its glass cockpit. My left head unleashed a concentrated beam of highly toxic acid. The corrosive liquid struck the reinforced cockpit window. Thick armored glass melted away in a matter of milliseconds. The human pilot screamed as the toxic fumes filled his cabin. I landed heavily upon the melting frame of the open cockpit. My central head bit directly into the main control console. I ripped the central processing unit from the heavy machinery. The massive mechanical walker instantly lost all its power. It collapsed forward and crashed heavily into the concrete. I swallowed the heavy processor unit to absorb its raw data. System confirms the integration of local tactical networks. A detailed map of the entire planet downloaded into my brain. I processed the massive geographical data with extreme speed. The northern hemisphere contained a massive frozen wasteland. That location held the necessary energy for my final head. I jumped off the ruined mech and landed on the solid ground. A massive swarm of armed drones deployed from the main roof. Hundreds of red targeting lasers locked onto my dark armor. I refused to waste my valuable time fighting mindless toys. I focused my absolute gravity field directly beneath my feet. I reversed the planetary polarity to launch myself skyward. My small physical body shot upward like a dark cannonball. The drone swarm fired thousands of plasma bolts in response. I easily outpaced their pathetic projectiles in the high air. Gravity manipulation provides absolute mobility in any fight. I stabilized my trajectory within the upper cold atmosphere. The air grew violently thin and freezing at this high altitude. I directed my flight path toward the frozen northern continent. The journey across the massive planet took exactly 2 hours. A vast landscape of jagged blue ice appeared below my paws. Fierce blizzards raged across the desolate frozen wasteland. I deactivated my gravity field and initiated a rapid descent. My dense physical body crashed heavily into the solid glacier. The violent impact created a massive crater in the thick ice. I stepped out of the heavy debris and analyzed the area. System detects a supreme, absolute zero energy signature. The source was located deep within a massive frozen cavern. I walked slowly toward the dark entrance of the icy cave. The ambient temperature dropped well below normal parameters. My right deadhead twitched violently in the freezing wind. It desperately craved the raw power hidden within this cave. I entered the dark tunnel and descended into the deep abyss. Heavy ice crystals illuminated the path with a pale blue glow. Heavy footsteps suddenly broke the silence of the frozen cavern. A massive beast emerged from the shadows of the deep tunnel. It resembled a giant armored bear made entirely of solid ice. System identifies the target as the glacial apex predator. The monster roared and unleashed a massive wave of freezing air. I activated my toxic aura to neutralize the incoming cold blast. The acidic gas violently clashed with the absolute zero wind. A thick cloud of highly corrosive steam filled the dark cave. Visual confirmation became completely impossible in the dense fog. I relied entirely on my advanced gravitational sensory network. The massive bear charged through the steam with terrifying speed. It swung its heavy frozen claws directly at my central head. I dropped my mask to the floor to avoid the heavy strike. The massive claws shattered the solid ice wall behind my body. I lunged forward and bit deeply into its exposed front leg. My central fangs failed to pierce its heavy magical ice armor. Physical strength is useless against extreme elemental defense. The bear kicked my small body away with massive kinetic force. I crashed heavily into the opposite wall of the frozen cavern. My dark scales absorbed the impact, but my internal organs shook. I quickly recovered my footing and calculated a new strategy. I needed to melt its heavy armor before landing a fatal blow. My newly revived left head opened its jaws to maximum capacity. I fired a highly concentrated beam of boiling toxic plasma. The corrosive attack struck the massive bear in the chest. Boiling acid rapidly melted through the thick layers of ice. The beast roared in pain as its heavy defense completely failed. A glowing blue core became visible within its exposed chest. I activated my gravity control to launch myself at the target. My central head clamped its heavy jaws around the freezing core. I ripped the massive magical organ directly from its frozen body. The giant bear instantly collapsed into a pile of shattered ice. System confirms the successful extraction of a glacial core. I held the freezing blue crystal within my heavy central jaws. I transferred the massive object directly to my right deadhead. The dry jaws snapped shut and swallowed the core instantly. System confirms massive intake of absolute zero magic. The dead skin on my right head rapidly regenerated its lost mass. Thick white scales formed a heavy defense layer over its skull. Its purple eyes opened and released a blast of freezing energy. Host has successfully restored the absolute ice head. My physical body began to violently expand in all directions. The heavy influx of magic triggered a massive rapid evolution. My dark fur shifted into highly compressed cosmic dark matter. I grew to the massive size of a heavy armored transport vehicle. All three of my powerful heads were now fully active and lethal. System confirms the complete restoration of the Trinity form. I let out a massive roar that shook the entire frozen cave. The heavy ice walls shattered completely under the sonic force. I stepped out of the ruins and observed the frozen wasteland. My power was still only a tiny fraction of my former godhood. I needed to consume the strongest entities on this entire world. A massive shadow suddenly blocked out the light of the pale moon. I looked up and saw a colossal warship descending from orbit. The massive vessel was armed with heavy advanced plasma cannons. System detects the arrival of the planetary overlord entity. This ruler clearly noticed the massive spike in my local energy. A giant holographic projection appeared in the dark freezing sky. An arrogant alien commander demanded my immediate total surrender. He claimed my rare genetic structure belonged to his vast empire. Negotiating with inferior biological beings is completely useless. I activated my heavy gravity field to its new maximum capacity. I anchored my massive paws firmly into the solid frozen glacier. I extended my heavy gravitational pull toward the massive ship. The massive vessel instantly lost all orbital stabilization. Its heavy thrusters burned violently to resist my invisible grip. Gravity is a fundamental law that ignores all alien technology. I slowly dragged the massive warship down toward the solid ice. The alien commander panicked and ordered a full weapons barrage. Hundreds of heavy plasma bolts rained down upon my dark position. My central head unleashed a massive sphere of singularity energy. The dark void absorbed the incoming plasma without any effort. I increased the gravitational pressure on the descending warship. The heavy metal hull began to fracture under the massive stress. It crashed violently into the glacier just 1 mile away from me. The heavy kinetic impact sent a shockwave of shattered blue ice. I released my gravity hold and began walking toward the wreckage. Target warship neutralized with absolute tactical efficiency. The heavy blast doors of the ruined ship were kicked open loudly. The planetary overlord stepped out wearing massive power armor. He wielded a giant heavy broadsword crackling with dark energy. He glared at my massive three-headed form with absolute rage. Emotions heavily degrade performance in high-stress combat zones. He charged forward with his heavy boots cracking the solid ice. I waited for him to enter my optimal physical striking distance. He swung his heavy dark blade in a devastating vertical strike. My right head unleashed a massive blast of absolute zero energy. The freezing beam struck his heavy armored arms mid-swing. Extreme thermal shock instantly locked his mechanical joints. His heavy dark sword stopped exactly 1 inch above my dark head. I followed up immediately with my fully revived left head now. I fired a concentrated stream of highly corrosive digital poison. The toxic acid melted through his frozen chestplate in seconds. His advanced armor systems failed under the heavy dual assault. I lunged forward and bit directly into his exposed alien torso. My heavy central fangs crushed his fragile spine with total ease. He dropped his heavy dark sword and lost consciousness instantly. System confirms the total defeat of the planetary overlord. I ripped the glowing energy core from his ruined power armor. I swallowed the massive battery to increase my internal reserves. Host has successfully integrated advanced alien technology. I looked up at the dark sky filled with many distant alien stars. This primitive planet no longer offered any worthy challenges. I needed to find a method to travel across the vast, cold galaxy. I approached the ruined wreckage of the massive alien warship. The main hyperdrive engine remained mostly intact after the fall. I placed my heavy front paws directly onto the massive engine. I activated my singularity core to absorb the complex machinery. The heavy metal dissolved into pure data and entered my body. System confirms the assimilation of hyperspatial travel. My massive, dark matter body began to vibrate with spatial energy. I possessed the ability to tear through the fabric of space now. I channeled all three of my elements into a single focal point. Cosmic gravity, absolute ice, and digital poison merged together. I unleashed the combined beam directly at the empty dark sky. The heavy attack ripped a glowing portal in the high atmosphere. This spatial rift led directly to the central galactic capital. I activated my gravity field and launched myself into the portal. The dimensional tunnel twisted violently around my heavy armor. I emerged into a massive space station above a heavy gas giant. Millions of alien citizens froze in absolute terror at my sight. My massive, three-headed form blocked out the artificial sun. System detects the presence of the Galactic Council Vanguard. Thousands of armed elite guards rushed into the main square. They deployed massive energy shields to block my forward advance. I simply walked forward and crushed their shields under my paws. Raw physical mass easily shatters standard energy defense grids. The elite guards fired their heavy weapons in a desperate panic. The plasma bolts bounced harmlessly off my dark matter scales. I opened my fully restored left head and unleashed a toxic cloud. The corrosive gas rapidly dissolved their advanced heavy weapons. I followed up with a massive freezing blast from my right head. Extreme cold locked their heavy armor joints firmly in place. I stood over the paralyzed army with absolute supreme authority. The central doors of the massive command center opened slowly. A towering mechanical gladiator stepped out onto the metal floor. It wielded two massive kinetic hammers pulsing with raw energy. System identifies the target as the Supreme Galactic Champion. This machine was built specifically to execute cosmic anomalies. It charged forward with extreme speed and raised both hammers. I did not bother to dodge the highly predictable physical attack. I caught both heavy kinetic hammers directly in my central jaws. The explosive shockwave shattered the metal floor beneath me. I applied extreme crushing pressure to the advanced weapons. The kinetic hammers violently detonated inside my dark mouth. My singularity core absorbed the massive blast without any issue. The gladiator stared at my unharmed face in absolute total shock. I lunged forward and slammed my heavy paws into its metal chest. The immense physical